Well, hey guys, welcome in once again to the Next Man Up podcast. Your host, Mark Stanier here, and I'm honored as always to be with you for another episode. Whether you're joining us today for the first time or you've been with us for a while, we are grateful you have chosen to be part of this community that is about being and raising healthy and godly men. Speaking of being part of this community, welcome back once again, John. Good to have you.
Good to see you, Coach Stanier.
Ah, yes, Coach John. We do have that in common. I think we talked about that in the first episode where we were like getting to know who John is. We did meet in a coach training program, and that was a number of years ago at this point.
It was.
So since you used the word coach, generally speaking, when you hear the word coach or when you're out and about in general American public and people hear the word coach, what do they typically think of?
Well, there's several answers to that question. If it depends on what season of the year you're in, at least for me, because I'm going to be thinking about the coach of whatever team I'm currently paying attention to in their season. So there's that. Of course, then you can think, I'm going to just give a bullet list here. You can think of I'll call them celebrity coaches. Like as we're recording today, Coach K just finished out his career. So I think most people either think about that, those type of people that really is outside of their lane. They're on some pedestal or whatever. But they also think of coaches that I had, when I was younger.
Yeah.
So we think mostly I do. I think mostly about sports.
Yeah, in the sports context, right? Like that. Yeah. That's one of the things I noticed early in my professional coaching journey is that that word is most often associated with sports, regardless of the sport. Like as kids, that's where we learned the term coach, and we've got examples like I'm sure, I don't know, maybe you don't. Do you have actually, so I have a bunch of questions rolling through my mind at the moment. Do you have a favorite coach from your growing up?
Oh yeah. Coach McCabe.
Okay. So like what sport was that?
It was a pitiful year of soccer. That's what that was. But he was an excellent coach.
So I'm learning something about you. Like we've known each other for a number of years and have had lots and lots of conversations, but I don't know that I've ever associated you with sports as a participant, certainly as a fan. Right. In a previous episode, we talked about the Cardinals, but as a participant. So like what role did sports play for you as a kid?
So in high school, I was in a very small Christian school in South Georgia. So pretty much if we're going to have a team, everybody has to play. That was pretty much the deal. So for us, basketball, of course, is pretty easy for any school to pull off, from an economic, budget standpoint.
Right.
We did not have a baseball team. So it's ironic. I'm a huge baseball fan with very little baseball experience, as a player. But one season, maybe two, I think 2 seasons, when we just could not even sustain a flag football team, we tried soccer, and none of us had played soccer before. So it was, back to that whole, can we have video of that, please? We had to be just horrible to watch if you had any level of training in soccer to watch us play. But I played soccer for Coach McCabe, and I could tell you several stories we don't have time for, but he was by far my favorite coach.
Why? What stands out for you in terms of him as a coach?
Well, he was the most qualified, so that helps. But
like he had played the game before?
Yeah, exactly. He had some credibility. He had played in college, and so he knew what he was doing. To automatically, he had our respect.
Mm.
So there's that. But he had to have tremendous patience working with these 15 to 18-year-olds who never played the game.
Yeah.
And he exemplified that. Occasionally he showed that he was a coach that could give in to his emotions. But for the most part, he was very patient and truly wanted us to improve and learn the game.
Yeah, so I can imagine that he had his hands full, trying to teach a bunch of rookies how to play a game at a high school level. But it left an impression on you. And I don't know, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but I suspect that beyond just his skill and ability, there must have been a connection there, right? Like I don't know, I'm putting words in your mouth.
Well, it's true. He was also a teacher in our
Okay.
school. He wasn't just the coach. So I saw him in the classroom setting as well. And how he was on the field was how he was everywhere. So he was not only helping us learn a game, he was modeling, and I don't remember him giving speeches about this is how to be a man and how to live life. He just modeled it for us. And it certainly helped me not having my dad at those years in my life to have someone like that to watch and see that he just lived a consistent life. How he was on the field was how he was in the classroom, how he was at church, how he was in the community. He was the same.
Yeah. No, that's cool. When I look back on my sports career, I remember many of my coaches, although I didn't have a ton. My dad coached much of my athletics for into and up to into elementary and maybe up to middle school. But the one that stands out for me is my college baseball coach. And I only played for 1 year, so I didn't have a whole lot of interaction with him. But for me, he was a good balance of expecting more and not letting me get away with things that I could have gotten away with in previous years, but also giving me more at the same time, right? Like expecting, but also helping to teach and to give. And in particular, hitting, I remember learning from him really for the first time to approach hitting a baseball with this mindset of driving the ball, driving the ball, driving the ball. And for me, that was a game changer. Like I didn't get to play much as a freshman. And as I said, I only played for 1 year, but my ability to go to the plate with confidence and swing with the intent to drive the ball was completely different than it was more of an offensive approach to hitting versus a defensive approach to hitting where I'm trying not to strike out, So when I think about athletic coach, sports coach, Coach Veal is the one that comes to mind because of that. And again, I only had a short window with him, but that's the one that stands out for me. The interesting thing here, John, is that when you and I talk about coaching today. It's quite a bit different than what we experience. Now, there's some similarities to sports coaching for sure, but it's quite a bit different to the type of coaching that we experienced when we were playing sports, or the general perception of what a coach is, what a coach does. And we're gonna translate this into how you as a dad, guys, can coach your son. But I think before we can get to that, we need to set up what is coaching in the context of what we're talking about here, not the sports coach. What are we talking about? So when you think about this type of coaching, the professional coaching as the skill or the industry, How would you describe that in layman's terms or in simple terms that would resonate with the guys listening?
So I'm going to answer that by my own journey into that, because for the longest time when I heard about life coaching, I thought it was a joke.
Hooey.
And the first time somebody suggested that I look into it, not to be coached, but like, we think you could be a really good life coach. I'm like, no, thank you. And it wasn't until I actually educated myself and had a better understanding of it that I'm like, oh, okay, now I see it.
Yeah.
The reason I think people suggested that they thought I might be a good coach is because of one really good element of what good coaching is, and that's just being a good listener.
Mm.
You can be a good listener and still not necessarily be a good coach, but that's certainly one strong key component that has to be there to be a good coach. The thing that I had to learn that coaching was not is you're not there to fix everything.
Mm-hmm.
You need to actually get rid of that. So I tell people, and I'm repeating something that I read in one of the first books I read about coaching, like, I'm a recovering fixer.
I can relate.
You know?
I can relate.
Yeah. So if you're totally get it, but Dad, if your thought about parenting and fathering your son is about trying to make sure he's exactly who you want him to be, that you're not coaching him.
Mm.
You're not coaching him. So you have to pull away from that temptation, and you mean well. Believe we all mean well by that, but you have to pull away from that and get more in this space of being with them and helping them think through what it is that they feel led to be going after in their life, or how to solve a problem. Instead of you giving the answer, sit in it with them, help them think through that. That's really what a coach does. A coach doesn't come in and say, here's how to do X, Y, Z, go do my plan. The plan might be good, but it's not going to work for everybody. And more than likely, I'm pretty sure, Mark, from your stories, both of your boys are not the same.
That's right. They're totally different.
So your plan for one boy may be all right, but it probably is not going to work for the other one.
And
it's your plan.
And neither of them are just like me. Right.
Correct.
So as I'm thinking about a plan or potentially formulating what I think is quote unquote best for them, a lot of that comes out of my own experience and my own story that's things that have worked or haven't worked for me. I want to suggest something to you and then keep us moving. Like this whole idea of fixing, I think that's I think that's something that we should come back to down the road as another topic and unpack that one directly, because I think you might have hit on something that is worth spending some more time on. So let's park that, because I think that could be a good future episode. But continue down this path of what is coaching, and then. So before I ask the question, the next question, anything else that in the definition of what coaching is in this context here that you feel is beneficial to pull out?
Well, maybe a different way to say, don't just tell them your plan. Another way to, all right, well, what do I do if I don't tell them? is to become a good questioner. And I don't mean judgmental. That's not what I mean. I mean, trying to ask helpful questions that give them the ability to think on their own, not just to rely on whoever else, and help them to become a man in how they think and how they problem solve on their own. Not to say that certainly we benefit from our brothers in our community, but how can we help them become their own man in the way they think and the questions that they can learn to ask themselves, instead of, okay, well, my dad told me to do it, so I'm just going to go do that.
Yeah. In my journey of learning to ask better questions, one of the things that has helped me is instead of asking questions to get to the answer that I want them to get to, I try to ask questions more out of curiosity of what we could discover together. And whether it's a professional client or a child, the best questions are the ones that yield answers that neither of us expected or knew was going to come out. Like that's when discovery really happens, rather than angling them, thinking that I'm asking good questions, but really I'm just angling them to get me the answer that I want to hear. Like there's a better way to come about asking questions, and being curious is a way that I think about it, and it's always a good reminder for me.
Yeah, now this is going to be hard to hear because it's easy for me to say as a non-parent, but I've often challenged friends of mine. Honestly, your child's not yours, which is hard. I could only imagine that may be a little hard to hear, but God didn't give him to you, give your son to you for your pleasure. that's so trying to take your hands off gradually as they mature and as they age to where they can really be God's and not yours anymore.
Yeah.
That has to be a journey. So switching your hat, when they were 2, they needed everything from you. When they're 12, when they're 15, hands have to start coming off. And this is where coaching is so valuable.
It's a good reference because we spend a decent amount of time talking about the apprentice years. Like in the process of becoming a man, we think about it here as novice and 0 to 12, apprentice 13 to 18, and then into the manhood journeyman category, and then master.
Yeah.
But like those apprentice years, even thinking about what an apprentice is, it is a journeyman or a master craftsman in training. And during those apprentice years, there's teaching and training and modeling by the mentor, so to speak. But there's also some hands-off, letting them learn to use the skills, the tools to do it themselves, but with much more direct guidance so that they don't get themselves in trouble. But like these apprentice years are a great time to leverage the skill of coaching to allow your son to take on more and more ownership, to begin to take your hands off through questions and asking and inviting them into more ownership, rather than continuing to parent them at 12 and 16 and 18 the way you did when they were 2 and 4 and 6.
Yeah. They'll be a much more confident freshman in college. Let's put it that way.
For sure.
When they don't have to call dad every day, what am I supposed to do here? They have at least, I don't know, put a percentage out there, 80% of their questions, they have skills enough to figure it out on their own and not have to rely on somebody else.
It's interesting thinking about my own journey as a parent and the process of leading my boys through their rite of passage initiation journey. There's a very clear line of before as a boy, after as a man. But our experience, and this is just our experience, it may not be the case for everybody, but our experience has been the relationship is more rich and full and deep, and there's still plenty of what do you think, Dad, questions after they've graduated apprentice into journeyman. It's not like my job stops or the relationship is over. It's as if in those apprentice years, using tools like coaching, and as we talked a couple episodes ago, leaning into the relationship and investing in their heart, the yield then becomes a much more rich and full and meaningful relationship as they become men, as they have become adults.
So I have a question then. The You mentioned the novice apprenticeship and into journeyman understanding. If you're moving from apprentice to journeyman, is there some type of intentional switch that goes off in the dad's brain that says, okay, now's the time I need to start being more of a coach? You follow my question?
I do. Let me answer it in a couple of ways. Learning the skill of coaching has made me a better parent, regardless of the age of my kids. And there are ways to implement the skill with a 2-year-old that are different than an 8, that are different from a 12. During the apprentice years is when I think it becomes much more impactful. Not to say that it wasn't impactful or can't be impactful when kids are younger, but I think it becomes much more impactful specifically because you're setting those kids up to make decisions for themselves. You're empowering, you're enabling them to be able to make decisions for themselves and giving them practice before they graduate into that journeyman stage. Now, here was the surprise thing for me, John. That line of demarcation, moving from apprentice to journeyman, was a reminder that there's a relationship shift in our relationship. My parenting process has changed. What's required of me as a dad has now changed. And even though I'm coming at them in a similar way, like asking them questions. What do you think? Versus, well, here's what I think you should do. That line of demarcation that happened for us at that final rite of passage ceremony was a reminder that, I now treat this boy become a man in many ways as a peer. Like I would any other guy, like a couple of guys hanging out around the campfire in my backyard. I wouldn't just launch into telling them what to do. I would be more like, well, let's talk about the situation. And some of that's my wiring, right?
Yeah.
and personality.
Right.
But I'm aware that we're peers in that situation. And so for me, it was an unexpected and surprising benefit of seeing my son now become a man as a peer. Yeah. Does he have it all figured out? No, absolutely not. But neither did I at that age. That's part of the process. But he, to borrow the sports analogy, he knew enough, was skilled, experienced, talented enough, to play with the metaphor here, to make the team. The practice continues and the skill development continues and the improved performance, i.e. what does it mean to be a man, continues now that he's on the team. It doesn't stop. But he knew enough to be able to make the team, and now I'm treating him as a teammate rather than as my son telling him what to do. Does that make sense? Does that kind of get at what you were asking?
Yeah. And what I also love about what you said, you didn't quite say this, so I'm going to rephrase it and you tell me if it's accurate. The rite of passage exercise is just as much for the dad as it is for the son.
That was the surprise to me going through this. Yes, absolutely. And by the way, my wife will tell you the same thing. She bought in on the whole idea from the beginning, but it was also a good reminder for her, like, okay, my son is not a boy anymore. He's a man, and I have to treat him like one.
So if it might sound a little selfish, but hey, if for no other reason, help yourself out.
That's right.
And consider doing this so you can help yourself get some answers to, all right, how am I doing as a dad? How am I doing at preparing my son to be a man? And if this is going to help both of us, fantastic. Let's do it.
That's right. And I would be remiss if I didn't suggest the resource that we have on our website, thenextmanup.com/forgingmen. If you want some guidance on how to put a plan together, you can find it there on the website. Mm-hmm. So let me bring us back to coaching in particular. Like, it really dovetails these apprentice years, and it's a great tool. We talked a couple episodes ago about, we finished with the idea of hammerhead, right? Like, putting these coaching skills into your toolbox can really, really help you not just be a hammer, but to be the tool that's needed in the moment. What from your perspective, John, what might be some good ways that dads can get started using, working, getting comfortable with this tool that we're referring to as coaching?
Well, instead of a hammer, just put a big fat ear on your body, and that start there using that analogy. But honestly, finding ways. If I could have what I wish I had, I'll sort of look at it through that lens. I wish I had someone who would have given me the space to just talk and just ask questions. Ask questions. And I know now, as having gotten the coaching training I have, but I know myself better, that sometimes what your son needs is just someone to hear him and to help him process stuff, not to give him the answer, but just help him to, all right, be a good listener. It's like, well, I heard you say this. Is that the direction you want to go? Or have you considered these other options? Or that's bad coaching right there. Just ask the question.
What other options have you considered?
Right. Just ask that. And catch yourself, just like I just did. Catch yourself when you are giving instruction, when you would rather let them, what's the word I want? Discover it on their own, or encourage them to find ways to discover that. So it really does come back to, in my mind, two key elements: being a good listener, watching, and listening to them, but then developing a good habit of helping them think by asking good questions.
So a good indicator of whether your question is going to be a good one or not is, does it start with what or how? Which is not generally those questions don't resolve with a yes answer or a no or a one-word answer, right? They're much more open-ended. So I think that's a way for us to assess the quality of our questions. And then, as I said earlier, if you're trying to if you're trying to lead them to a specific answer, you can do that with statements just as easily as you can with questions. And if you're asking questions, you might feel like you're getting them where you want to go. Back to what or how based questions. For example, I said this a few minutes ago. If you have the opportunity, if you have the relationship with your son where he comes to you and says, "Dad, here's my situation. What should I do?" The temptation there is to jump in and either fix or suggest or tell. A good coaching response in that moment is, "Well, what do you think, son?" And then give them space, like you said, John, to process out loud, maybe to be heard. Maybe they already know the answer, but they just haven't sorted it out yet. But that little thing right there could be a huge a key that opens up a huge room of opportunity for you and them in that relationship.
Yeah, and let me interject there, because when you do that, you might just have unlocked a door that they were waiting for someone to unlock. It's like they asked me, this figure in my life wants to know what I think. That's huge. That's huge for him. And it may, when he unlocks that door, he might find some things behind that door that he didn't even know existed. And there goes to the discovery for both of you, that you wouldn't have gotten to that point in the conversation and in your relationship had you not taken the time to just ask that simple question, what do you think? And suddenly this door comes open and you're like, holy crap, I didn't know you thought that. And your boy may even's like, I didn't know that's why I wasn't voicing this out loud, or what was keeping me from pursuing this option. So many possibilities are potential by asking a good question. And that's a simple question. That's really all it takes. We're not asking everybody to become master questioners.
Right.
Yeah, it's just be willing to ask the question and not be afraid of the answer or be afraid of some vulnerability on either one of your part. If you're going to grow together, it's going to take that.
I have a buddy who has a son the same age as my oldest, and we've had conversations before about man training and rite of passage, and I remember asking him, when did you feel like you became a man? And he said, it was when my dad asked me on a construction job, what do you think we should do in this moment? And he was I think he was well into his late teens, maybe early 20s. But your suggestion, John, is making me think of his story, because he's like, Mark, that's when I realized my dad saw me differently. And that's 30 some years ago for him. And yet it's still what he goes back to as that pivotal moment where dad said, Dad communicated much more probably than he realized to my friend when he asked him the question. And it was pivotal for him.
Well, and you and I have been the benefit of being able to see sort of the light bulb go off, or someone be heard in a way that they have not been heard before. And it's life-changing. Well, that sounds pretty grandiose. In the moment, at least, it can feel like validation, whatever the word is, it could feel like, all right, I've just been released to go in a direction, and I feel affirmed to go in that direction.
Yeah.
I wasn't told to, but I've gotten what I needed to move on. And man, if your sons can get that from you, that's the best place to get it.
That's right. I've had a number of coaching conversations recently where the client in the situation tells me that the most valuable part, or the most valuable thing for them from that coaching engagement, was just space to process whatever they were processing. And when you can listen without trying to jump in and fix, when you can ask some good open questions, or here's a statement that acts like a question, even though it's not a question, you can say something like, that's interesting. Say more about that. It's that invitation to keep going, to keep processing, to keep exploring. And as dad, it's resisting the temptation to just jump in and direct and tell and fix and advise. And as you said before, John, well-intended, right? Coming from a good place, but maybe the wrong tool in the situation. And what we're hoping to do is provide you with a better tool, another tool that you could use in the situation. You don't have to go through the certification programs. You don't have to do the training that John and I did to benefit from this. There's small shifts that you can make that will have significant benefits in your relationship and in how your son grows into becoming a man.
Yeah, and I just want to say this because it's fresh in my brain. When you show up to what we were describing a couple episodes ago about discipline, when you show up as a coach in a disciplined situation, odds are your son is going to get a whole lot more, I'm not sure what even the right words. It's just going to be a richer moment of discipline.
Yeah.
If you show up as a coach versus the hammer.
Less about administering punishment and more about finding insight and discovery, even in the midst of a difficult situation where you got to be the dad and you gotta adhere to those boundaries or those consequences. It can still be a rich moment, as you said.
Yeah, your son needs to, hear straight talk, but if that's all they hear, the moment's lost.
Yeah,
from what it could have been.
Yeah. Well, I've been wanting to get to this topic for a while. I'm glad we finally did, and I love being able to do it with the partnership of another coach who understands the value and the benefit of this tool. But I realize that most of our audience is not going to be familiar with this type of coaching, and that even applying some of these tools can be a little bit challenging. So I wanted to leave you guys with just a couple of recommendations. These are not parenting books. I will admit that, but both John and I are readers. John, I don't know if you've read either of the books that I'm about to mention.
No.
But they are both very accessible books about coaching. And the application is more in a professional setting or more of an adult setting. But if you get past the application and the context and catch the motive and the skill development behind it, then you can apply it in any and all relationships that you have, whether it's personal or professional. So the first one that I would recommend is Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Marilee Adams. It's part fable story and part principles and wisdom wrap up as the author reflects on the story that she creates. I'll put these in the show notes too, but Change Your Questions, Change Your Life is a good one. And the other one is called The Coaching Habit. Say Less, Ask More, and Change the Way You Lead Forever by Michael Bungay Stanier. That's a really good one as well. And as a dad, you are a leader in the home. You're leading your family. You're leading your son into manhood. And so again, thinking beyond just a professional business context, your family is an organization, and your relationship with your son is fully applicable for this skill of coaching. So anyway, The Coaching Habit is another good one. For those of you that are interested in going a little bit deeper, I've read and refer to those books frequently, highly recommend them. John, any resources or suggestions that, not that there has to be, but anything that comes to your mind?
Man, I'm trying to come up with one and I don't have one. So good job.
I got you back. I got your back. All right, guys. Well, I hope that this has whet your appetite a little bit for what could be, that we've provided a little bit of context into how to understand coaching as you hear it out in your marketplace or in your comings and goings in your adult life. Take it from me. Coaching has changed my life. It's changed all of the relationships that I have, and it's made me significantly better as a father. And that's what we want for you. And by the way, if you got specific questions for us, you want to know a little bit more, feel free to email us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. We'd be happy to engage with you around the tool of coaching. John, any last thoughts before we sign off?
No.
Well, then this is a good episode because we got everything we could get out of you on this topic. So we wrung you dry. Guys, thanks for being with us and for letting us explore this topic. Hopefully it's helpful to you. We will be back, same bat time, same bat channel next week. Until then, adios. To send us your comments or questions, you can email us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. The theme music is by Jacob Stanier at Jacob Stanier Music,
And this show is part of the NRT Podcast Network.